My little brother, who was 3 years old, was throwing a tantrum. He wanted to go to McDonald's for lunch, but my parents were supposed to have lunch with Mr. and Mrs. Lim. Mr. Lim was my father's colleague, and they were supposed to discuss some work matters over lunch. It was a Saturday, and we had already placed our reservations at a restaurant on Orchard Road. I had just rushed home from remedial lessons, and I was getting ready as fast as I could. When I had gotten dressed, I took over the job of trying to calm my brother down from my frazzled mother. I was quite annoyed with him, and I really felt like slapping him to make him stop screaming. But I couldn't do that because I would get into trouble with my mother. He finally stopped screaming and just sobbed quietly because he was tired. I decided to ignore his sobbing and cleaned him up as much as possible. When we reached the restaurant, we saw that it was quite a classy and expensive-looking one. There was a waiter standing at the entrance, and he ushered us politely to our seats. Mr. and Mrs. Lim were already there. We were slightly late because of my brother. We apologized and proceeded to place our order for the food. While waiting for the food, my brother started whining that he was hungry and he wanted to go to McDonald's. We promised him that we would bring him to McDonald's if he behaved himself. Fortunately, the food did not take long to arrive. My mother had ordered a mini roast chicken and potatoes set for my brother. He did not mind the potatoes, but he took one bite of the chicken and then spat it out. It was disgusting. My parents were extremely angry at my brother's behavior, and we apologized profusely to Mr. and Mrs. Lim. However, worse was to come. When we decided that Wash should just ignore my brother and let him feed himself, he thought he would start his mischief. He started throwing pieces of chicken and potatoes all over the place. The last straw was when he threw a piece of potato at my mother. The waiter who served us was very efficient. He immediately helped to clean up the mess, but he frowned at my brother after my father threatened to give him a caning. My brother became a little quieter and got on with his lunch. A few minutes later, he requested to be led down from his high chair. My mother did not allow it at first, but he started screaming loudly, so she quickly let him down. We warned him not to wander too far away from our table. Of course, he did not listen. He started going under our table at first. We thought we would leave him there if he liked it. Unfortunately, he wandered from underneath our table to other tables. He managed to slip quietly under a table which was quite far away from us. We were eating our lunch and talking among ourselves, and we might have forgotten about my brother, when I suddenly realized that he was too quiet. I looked under our table and discovered my brother had gone missing. My mother and I immediately started to look around for him. With the help of some of the waiters and waitresses, we did not have to look long because we suddenly heard a lady screaming that someone had bitten her. From under her table, she pulled out a little boy who was barking like a dog. It was my mischievous little brother. My parents and I nearly died of embarrassment. I guessed it was my brother's way of punishing us for not bringing him to McDonald's. My father was absolutely livid with anger. My mother decided that she should drive my brother and I home first and come join my father later. So, I was handed the task of babysitting my annoying brother. Fortunately, he fell asleep once we reached home. When my parents came back later, he woke up and threw his tantrum again, reminding us of our promise to him. My father lost his patience and gave him a caning on his buttocks. He screamed even louder, but we ignored him, and he finally gave up screaming and just sobbed quietly for about 15 minutes. Soon, he calmed down, and I decided to bring him to McDonald's after seeking permission from my parents.